Hi everyone, welcome to the Highlights from Ukraine podcast, your daily audio summary of the latest news reported in the Ukrainian media. Sorry for such a long break, the business trip took longer than we expected. But now we are back. My name is Artem, and here is the news. 823 days less the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Number of victims of the Russian strike against a DIY hypermarket in Kharkiv rose to 16 people, including one child. Rescue works are still ongoing, reports Suspilne. At least 44 people were wounded. On 25th of May, in the middle of the day, Russian forces attacked Kharkiv store epicenter. The building was destroyed before all people could get out. It took firefighters 16 hours to put out the fire. Considering the situation and daily attacks against the city and the region of Kharkiv, Ukraine seeks permission to strike military targets on the Russian territory using Western weapons. In his evening video address, President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky said that many leaders, representatives of states and international organizations, public figures have expressed their condolences to Ukraine and Kharkiv and condemned Russian terror. Quote, "It is important that this condemnation leads to entirely fair consequences, that we finally get a sufficient number of air defense systems to protect Ukraine and our cities, and that our partners have enough determination for preemptive protection against Russian terrorists, just as they would strike at any other terrorists, destroying them before they start taking lives," unquote, said the head of state. Zelensky added that Ukraine sees every point of concentration of Russian troops, areas where Russian missiles and combat aircraft are launched. Quote, "Destroying this terrorist force and thus saving thousands of lives and guaranteeing that the expansion of the war will be stopped is purely a political decision, a decision that needs to be made," unquote, he stressed. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg earlier expressed a belief that it is high time for some allies to reconsider restrictions on the use of weapons provided to Ukraine against targets in Russia, reports European Pravda. The New York Times reported that U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken wants to ensure that Ukraine is allowed to strike Russian territory with U.S. weapons. He wants to convince President Joe Biden to lift the restrictions. Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski also backed the proposal to allow Ukraine to strike with Western weapons on Russian territory. He said the constant proclamation of what our own red line is only encourages Moscow to adapt its hostile actions to our ever-changing self-imposed restrictions, unquote. At the same time, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz spoke out against Ukraine using weapons provided by Western allies to strike Russia. Scholz noted that he currently sees no reason to expand the area of use of Western weapons in the war in Ukraine. The aim of his policy is, quote, "to prevent the conflict from escalating into a major war," unquote. We would really appreciate if you could rate us, ideally with 5 stars, and leave a glowing review in the app where you are listening to this podcast, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and others. This really helps more people to find out about the highlights from Ukraine and learn the truth about Russia's invasion. Volodymyr Zelensky visited Kharkiv and recorded an address to the world leaders. The president of Ukraine asked for more air defense systems and also warned that Russian troops are gathering in new grouping near the border with Ukraine, 90 kilometers from Kharkiv. He pointed out that these are not actions of the country that wants peace and negotiations. According to the U.S. Institute for the Study of War, Russian forces are reportedly concentrating in western Belgorod Oblast near the border with Ukraine, likely to fix and draw Ukrainian forces to the area and prepare for offensive operations that aim to expand the Russian foothold in the international border area in northeastern Ukraine, reports Ukrainska Pravda. The experts believe that Zelensky referred to the Gaivoron-Borisovka-Proletarsky area in western Belgorod Oblast. The institute observed satellite imagery of the area that suggests that Russian forces have expanded activities at depots and warehouses in settlements in the area in recent weeks. The current size of the possible Russian force concentration in the area remains unclear, however. Ukrainian State Border Service representative Andriy Demchenko stated that Russian forces may launch offensive operations into Sumy Oblast or areas of Kharkiv Oblast bordering Sumy, in order to stretch and fix Ukrainian forces further along the international border area in northeastern Ukraine. The experts believe that Gaivoran-Borisovka-Proletarsky area would notably offer Russian forces opportunities to launch offensive operations to the south in the direction of Zolochiv and Bohodukhiv, two Ukrainian towns northwest of Kharkiv city within 25 kilometers of the international border, or to the west in the direction of settlements along the highway that connects Bohodukhiv with Sumy city. Russian forces could pursue offensive operations in either of those two directions, or both at the same time. And the Russian concentration here could be intended to cause Ukrainian forces to commit manpower and material to a wider section of the border in Kharkiv and Sumy oblasts. Russian forces are also concentrating limited forces in Kursk and Bryansk Oblast, close to the border with Sumy Oblast. And even limited concentrations in the areas could aim to achieve the likely desired effect of further drawing and fixing Ukrainian forces in the international border area. At the same time, the Russian northern grouping of forces, even at the upper limit of its reported end strength, will lack the necessary manpower needed to conduct a successful operation to envelop, encircle, or seize Kharkiv or Sumy cities, however. Thank you for listening to the Highlights from Ukraine podcast. We're a commercial initiative of just two people and we need your help to grow. Share information about the podcast, rate us in the app, subscribe to our Patreon. With your support, we are getting better. We call on you to demand from governments of your countries to impose the toughest sanctions possible on Russia and its citizens to stop their invasion of Ukraine.